Number 5. Giant isopods. No, this isn't a microscopic picture. This isn't a tick or a bug. This is a giant isopod. One of the scariest looking things picking around the ocean floor. Yeah, I don't know. Imagining this thing wiggling around is enough to already be giving me the willies. Don't worry too much. You're not too likely to find one of these things crawling around your home, as they usually live and feed about 1,600 feet beneath the ocean depths. So you'll have to really go looking for one of these creepy little crawlies. We don't know a lot about isopods, actually. It's difficult to study them in their habitat unbothered deep in the ocean. And also, if I had to guess, I think realistically it's because no one wants to spend any more time looking at one of these little zerglings longer than they have to. Despite their outward appearance, isopods are actually pretty chill. That's the official scientific statement, judging a book by a cover and all that. They're scavengers more than they are predators, waiting at the bottom of the sea for debris to reach them, like discarded bits of meat from crabs or any number of fish which they'll snack on. So basically, they're the moochers of the ocean, waiting for somebody else to do all the work and they'll just clean up the leftovers. It apparently isn't even that big a deal, though, because isopods have been observed to be able to go years and years without eating anything at all, with some reports going as far as 5 years without eating anything. I could not even imagine the anger you would feel through that. Enjoying what we're putting out at Top 5 Scary? Of course you are, that's why you're here. Why not toss a cheeky little subscribe our way as a way of saying thanks? We'll trade you the best scary videos this side of the web in exchange. Number 4. Barrel eye fish. Has anyone ever accused you of being empty-headed? I know that's something I've heard a lot in my time. I don't really know what that means. Unfortunately, my head, hollow as it might be, does not allow you to see inside because I am not a barrel eye fish, a being which is cursed to have a window for a forehead. The barrel eye fish may be one of the most confusing looking things under the sea. I mean, take a look at this thing. It kind of looks like it's not finished yet, you know? Like this fish was late for school and it forgot to put its face on. It's got its eyes inside its head and has a translucent head to accommodate that. You know, the rest of all life thought eyes on the outside, but the barrel eye just had to stand out and be different. Those two big green orbs are the fish's eyes, tinted with a sort of biological sunglasses kind of deal to help it zero in on light above it. The barrel eye uses its bizarre eyes to look upwards, tracking the shadows of its prey and then fixating on it. You wouldn't expect a creature that looks this weird to be an effective predator at all. Special organs on the fish's belly called soles deflect light from the creature's insides, illuminating the deep sea around it and also letting it camouflage. So this weirdo transparent head fish is also a mobile swimming light show. Just goes to show how absolutely amazing life down in the abyss is, where creatures will naturally adapt to their surroundings to evolve to have a flashlight built into them. Bless you, barrel eye fish. Bless you for being you. Number 3. Sarcastic fringehead. At first glance and description, the sarcastic fringehead doesn't sound particularly horrifying. It looks about as funky as most things you would see in an aquarium. And the name might make you wonder a little bit if it's got a reputation for being sassy, like maybe this is the fish that's always backhandedly complimenting you, which would be terrifying in its own right, but not for the reasons we tend to highlight on this channel. No, the sarcastic name comes from the fish's kind of dour expression, and I definitely do see where that's coming from because looking at photos of me, it looks like it's judging me just a little bit for my life's choices. Now, when this fish opens its mouth, you'll understand why it earned a spot here. The sarcastic fringehead's mouth can open up wider than its body, creating this delightful image you see here, and you will probably be seeing for the rest of your days. Now, if you're a little freaked out looking at this fish that looks like it crawled out of the upside down, that's understandable. But what if I told you that these fish have kiss fights? Sarcastic fringeheads fight for dominance with other fringeheads by expanding their very wide mouths and then pressing them together as a display to show who's got the biggest mouth. This is also how they attract mates, fighting off other fish and smacking their lips together to impress all the lady fringeheads, showing them just how wide their mouths go. And man, it has taken so much restraint right now to be talking about this and trying to keep this at a PG rating. Number 2. Frilled shark. A frilled shark, all things considered, sounds pretty cute. Maybe you're picturing a shark with lovely frills hanging off of it like some other fish have, like a cool fringe denim jacket. Or maybe you're picturing a shark wearing something lacy and frilly. I'm not gonna judge, you do whatever you'd like. Unfortunately, neither of those fantasies are particularly accurate because like everything else on this list, the frilled shark is an abomination of the ocean. It's already unnerving enough to look at, serving massive alien vibe, the James Cameron kind, not the friendly little gray man kind. And then it opens its mouth and you understand where the name comes from as you're treated to a mouth of 300 thrilled, razor-sharp teeth like barbed wire. Just like the alien, they're able to open their jaws real wide to be able to snarf down prey considerably greater than their size, although exactly how much larger is unknown. These little terrors hunt by swimming around with their maw open and using the darkness to try and lure smaller prey right into a trap before being engulfed by what looks like the world's sharpest car wash. I genuinely can't even look at this thing's mouth for too long without starting to feel a little bit queasy, imagining it biting into anything. The frilled shark is considered a living fossil, much like the coelacanth, because in the 80 million years frilled sharks have been swimming across our planet, they haven't changed much. At all. They more closely resemble prehistoric creatures than any of their contemporary shark counterparts. All that to say is, I guess, whatever nature was cooking with the frilled shark, clearly they got something right. They nailed it if they saw this thing for 80 million years and thought, absolutely no changes. This one's perfect. Number 1. Colossal squid. At our number 1 spot is a living legend, the colossal squid. Thought for many years to be an urban legend due to their elusive nature, for a long time not much was known about these cephalopods other than the fact that they are very, 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 very large. Reports of giant squids describe them as being anywhere up to a staggering 65 feet long, but collected squids range in at a much more humble 42 feet long. Oh. Okay, well I was getting worked up over nothing. Humans and colossal squids don't particularly cross paths often, what with them living 3,000 feet under the sea. And that is definitely a good thing, because these squids are not something you would ever want to mess with. Its tentacles are lined with sharp hooks to sink into their prey and prevent them from getting away. Alongside the usual suckers that squids' tentacles have, hard toothy-like rings that dig into prey and keep them wrangled. It's common to find whales covered in these scars, or slashes and shreds from the hook of a giant squid. The thought of being grabbed by these tentacles is enough to stop me from ever ordering calamari again. What with being one of the bigger monsters swimming around down there, the colossal squid doesn't have much in the way of predators. I guess that's kind of one of the benefits of being a 40-foot monstrosity. People stop messing with you, you know? People stop trying to pick on you. They start respecting you more, and no one tries to eat you anymore once you're, you know, bigger than anything else down there.
Coming in at 5, umbozo. Umbozo is a paranormal phenomena or yokai from Japanese folklore. Little is known of the origin of umbozo, but it is a sea spirit and as such has multiple sightings throughout Japan. Typically, umbozo appears to sailors on calm seas, which quickly turns tumultuous, either breaks the ship on emergence or demands a bucket or barrel from the sailors and proceeds to drown them. The only safe way to escape an umbozo is to give it bottomless barrel and sail away while it is confused. They appear and disappear in the oceans, often at night, and it is thought that they would suddenly appear on what was previously a calm sea surface as a giant black bozo head and destroy ships. In the Tohoku region, there is a custom of sacrificing to the gods the first fish caught when fishing, and it is said that if this is not followed, an umbozo would appear and destroy the boat and kidnap the boat owner. They are also said to change their appearance, and in Kesanuma, Oshima, Miyagi Prefecture, there are tales of them shapeshifting into a beautiful woman and engaging in swimming contests with humans. Odd. Outside of Japan, they are half-human legends about sea monks and sea bishops related to the umbozo. Coming in at number 4, ikuturso. Ikuturso, meaning the eternal tursu, also known as ikutursos, is a malevolent sea monster in Finnish mythology. As of now, Meriturus means octopus in Finnish, named after ikuturso, but originally Turus is an old name for walrus. This aquatic creature's appearance remains unclear, but he is described with several epithets. Partalainen, the one who lives on the brink, or alternatively, the bearded one. Tuonenhaka, the ox of Tuoni death. Tutapa, thousand head. Tuhatsavi, thousand horned. It was also sometimes said that he lived in Pohjola, but that could also be because Pohjola was believed to be home of all evil. In some cases, ikuturso is mentioned as the father of diseases, with Leviathan, the blind daughter of Tuoni, the god of death. In the world of Lovecraft, the ikuturso was a great old one who ruled over the area of Finland until he, alongside the other old ones, was sung into the swamps by Finnish sages and poets, who had learned these abilities from the Sami people. Around the 1930s, author Mats W. Cornelius, who was a correspondent of H.P. Lovecraft, wrote stories in which he compared ikuturso with the great old one Cthulhu. The creature is mentioned several times in the Finnish national epic. Kalevala, I quote, "From the ocean rose a giant mighty turso, tall and hairy, pressed compactly all the grasses that the maidens had been raking. When a fire within them kindles and the flame shot up to heaven, till the windows burned to ashes, only ashes now remaining. Of the grasses raked together in the ashes of the windows, tender leaves the giant places in the leaves moves, he plants an acorn. From the acorn quickly sprouting grows the oak tree tall and stately, from the ground enriched by ashes newly raked by water maidens. Spread the oak tree's many branches rounds itself a broad corona, raises it above the storm clouds. Far it stretches out its branches, stops the white clouds in their courses, with its branches hides the sunlight, with its many leaves the moonbeams, and the starlight dies in heaven. Coming in at number 3, Krone. Krone was a large sea monster in Scottish Gaelic folklore, famous from one specific saying, I quote, 7 herrings a salmon's fill, 7 salmon a seal's fill, 7 seals a large whale's fill, 7 whales a Krone's fill. Local folklore say this huge animal can disguise itself as a small silverfish when fishermen come in contact with it. Other accounts state the reason for the disguise was to attract its next meal. When the fisherman would watch it in its small silverfish form, once aboard it changed back to the monster and ate him. The creature has a typical water dragon or serpent shape that is vicious and terrifying, consuming anyone who crosses its path. Also, sorry this point was so short, it's literally because Krone has no information about it. You can check. Coming in at number 2, Ningjin. Over the past few years, rumours have circulated about the existence of Arctic humanoid lifeforms known as Ningjin, inhabiting the icy waters of the Antarctic. It has reportedly been observed multiple times by crew members on whale research ships, and these so-called Ningjin, meaning human, are said to be completely white in colour with an estimated length of 20 to 30 meters. Other eyewitnesses described them as having a human-like shape, often with legs, arms, and even 5-fingered hands. Other times they are described as having fins or a large mermaid-like tail instead of legs, or even tentacles. Now, the only visible identifiable facial features are the eyes and mouth. According to one particular account, crew members on deck observed what they thought was a foreign submarine in the distance. When they approached, however, it became clear from the irregular shape of the thing that it was not man-made, it was alive. It then disappeared under the surface of the water. These Ningjin stories garnered attention, with an article being printed about the Antarctic humans, with the article speculating on the possibility of unidentified creatures inhabiting the southern sea. Sadly, to date, no solid evidence has been presented to confirm the existence of the Ningjin. Sightings still occur to this day though, most frequently at night, making them all the more difficult to photograph. Whether they are dangerous we have no idea, however they are absolutely terrifying to look at, which is why they make it to number 2. And finally coming in at number 1, Leviathan. The Leviathan is a sea serpent monster of immense size from Jewish belief, referenced in the Hebrew Bible and the Book of Job, Psalms and the Book of Isaiah, and the Book of Amos. The Leviathan of the Middle Ages was used as an image of Satan, endangering both God's creatures by attempting to eat them and God's creation by threatening it with upheaval in the waters of chaos. St. Thomas Aquinas described the Leviathan as the demon of envy, first in punishing the corresponding sinners. It is also classified as one of the 7 princes of hell, corresponding to the 7 deadly sins. In Judaism, sources describe the Leviathan as a dragon who lives over the sources of the deep, and who, along with the male land monster Behemoth, will be served up to the righteous at the end of time. I quote, "The sea monsters, the great fish in the sea, and in the words of the Agada, this refers to the Leviathan and its mate, for he created them male and female, and he slew the female and salted her away for the righteous in the future, for if they would propagate the world could not exist because of them." According to sources, the body of the Leviathan, especially his eyes, possesses great illuminating power. This was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who in the course of the voyage in company with Rabbi Joshua explained to the latter, when frightened by the sudden appearance of a brilliant light, that it probably proceeded from the eyes of the Leviathan. In modern usage, however, the term Leviathan has come to refer to anything, specifically any sea monster, and from the early 17th century has also been used to refer to overwhelmingly powerful people or things, including Moby Dick.
Number 5. Ningjin. Our first creature to grace this list is the Ningjin. I've actually talked about these things on the channel before, but it's always good to get a refresher, especially when the subject in question is cryptids. This information might just save your life someday. Or at the very least, it gives you something interesting to talk about at a party. Either or, you're learning something today. The Ningjin is a cryptid that is a large aquatic whale or seal-like humanoid entity. Ningjin actually translates to human in Japanese, stemming from the creature's often humanoid appearance compared to other cryptids. Marked by its blank expression expression and indiscernible features save for beady black eyes. The Ningjin is a 30-meter long heaving beast frequently spotted around the Arctic and Antarctic oceans. The Ningjin first rose to prominence in 2012 when it caught mainstream public attention on a Japanese paranormal forum. The legend began when a user posted a story of a whaling research crew that was sailing through the passage and saw something they didn't recognize under the water. Initially, the research staff assumed that it was a submarine, although there shouldn't have been any other vessels around. But they found that when they tried to get a closer look to ID the submarine, it had vanished entirely. While this was one of the first popularized cases of the Ningjin, legends have actually predated this, with the first ever sighting thought to be traced back to 2005, when images from Google Earth revealed what looked like strange creatures inhabiting the area around icebergs. Skeptics believe that sightings of the Ningjin could just be fragments of icebergs appearing to our eyes, and we want to see them as monsters, but I'd argue a creature like the Ningjin must have some degree of camouflage. It's an all-white entity, it's reasonable to assume it evolved to avoid human eyes and blend in with the surroundings. It's unclear if the Ningjin is a predatory cryptid, as all sightings of it reported as being benign or simply investigating humans. They don't appear to have any particular interest in aggravating us, as no attacks have ever been recorded or any cases of missing researchers involved. Perhaps it's as curious about what we are as we are curious of it. And hey, my delightful little ghouls and goblins, if you're curious about cryptids, well, there's simply nowhere else on the internet that's gonna satisfy you as much as Top 5 Scary. And maybe the Cryptid Wiki, but they don't do videos. So click through and subscribe to Top 5 Scary and keep the screams coming all night long. Let's keep going. Number 4. Garappa. Garappa the Rappa, sorry, just Garappa. Garappa is an aquatic cryptid and not to be mistaken with its regional counterpart, the Kappa. Garappa, Arctic. Kappa, not Arctic. Write that down because there will be a test at the end of this video, and if you fail, I don't know what'll happen, but it's gonna be bad. Garappa is so fun to say though. I'm gonna throw that out there. Try that on for size at home. Tell me it doesn't feel fun coming out of your lips. I gotta get on topic here. Similar to a Kappa, a Garappa is described as having long, slender limbs like a frog or a monkey, and a turtle shell on its back. It has a beak like a duck, long, stringy black hair, and a bony plate or a dish on top of its head that also makes for a good ashtray. You'll recognize if a Garappa is around because of the call it makes, a distinctive, and forgive me for this if it's not perfectly accurate, hyo hyo sound. Although a Garappa may appear outwardly threatening, a Garappa is mostly shy creature, and they don't want the attention drawn onto them. I'm probably not helping the community much by discussing them here with you. They're shy and solitary, and usually keep to themselves, and usually tend to live in isolated communities by themselves, or with a few other Garappa. Despite their shyness though, they are reported to be incredibly strong, and can easily overpower a human if a fight were to occur. Some legends report too the Garappa are a bit of a prankster and cause all kinds of mischief. They're able to mimic human voices. They say if you do capture one, a Garappa will do anything it can to escape, pleading with you, promising to leave people alone, to stop causing mischief, to stop luring people away, so they're not all bad. Number 3. Akloot. Coming up next on the list is a beast called the Akloot. If we're ranking based solely on appearances, well, this is one of the coolest cryptids I have ever seen in my hundreds of years inside the fog making videos for this channel. The Akloot is an Inuit legend, and is sometimes described as the whale wolf, which, come on, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard, whale wolf. Depending on the legend, sometimes the Akloot is described as being a hybrid, chimera-like creature, looking like a wolf with like a fin on the back of it, but other times it's purported that it can alternate between the two forms at will, and take the form that it pleases to suit it best for whatever it needs. They're said to be around if you can find trails of paw prints and dog tracks that lead into ocean waters, or seeing dog tracks around where there shouldn't conceivably be any in the Arctic. The whale that an Akloot takes the form of is predominantly described as an orca, and interestingly, another name for an orca is a sea wolf, lending some credence to the folklore. Stemming from early days beliefs when storytellers believed that all land animals had aquatic equivalents, like sea cows and so on. Not much is known outright about Akloot, instead what is passed from folklore. They're thought to be dangerously vicious towards humans, which makes sense considering both of the things that they are pretty nasty with some gnarly teeth. There aren't too many recorded sightings, although if they're shape-shifting creatures, who's to say you haven't seen dozens upon dozens of them without even knowing? Unless you don't spend too much time in the Arctic, I suppose, then you probably haven't seen any. There is one legend in particular I found that stood out for me. It tells the tale of an Inuit man who becomes obsessed with the sea and wants to be part of it. He returns returns from a fishing expedition to his village, but his obsession with the ocean has driven him too isolated to relate to the village anymore, and he finds himself in exile. He sets out and lives with a pack of wolves, but his affection for the ocean never dwindles. He casts himself out into the ocean to preserve himself forever in its waters, and through the malevolent energy inside him, he transforms into an orca. He spends his days swimming in the oceans as an orca, but whenever his hunger and his lust for revenge is awoken, he can return to the land and take a form as a wolf. Number 2. Hook Island Sea Monster. The Hook Island Sea Monster is a sea monster that originates from Hook Island, right? That's all the information we've got. Moving on, okay? Oh, nope, new information just came in. Okay, yeah, this is good. The beast is a 90-foot long black sea monster that resembles a massive tadpole. The thing was first sighted dating all the way back to 1964 by one Robert Lesalic. Lesalic was a sailor who was traveling with his family on an unknown expedition, who spotted the creature underneath the water, moving towards his ship with what seemed like an open maw ready to strike. Lesalic noted that its tail appeared to be damaged, but he was unsure as to what could have caused lacerations on such a massive entity. He described it as, "Only when I got to within 20 feet of the creature that we could see its head clearly. The head was large, about 4 feet from top to bottom, with jaws about 4 feet wide. The lower jaw was flat like that of a sandfish. The skin was smooth, but rather dull, brownish black in color. The eyes seemed pale green, close to white. The skin looked more like that of a shark than it did an eel. There were no apparent scales, nor did we see any parasites around. We suppose the flexible tail would have shaken any off. There were no fins or spines, nor were there any apparent breathing openings, although there had to have been some. Perhaps we didn't see them because our attention was focused mainly on the creature's menacing mouth, the inside of which was whitish. The teeth appeared to be small. A fragment of some dark substance hung from the upper row of teeth, possibly a fish. As the monster was lying on the sandy bottom, we could not see the color of its belly. The creature looked to be about 90 feet long. Behind its body was 2 feet 4 inches thick and remained that way for about 25 feet. Then it gradually tapers off into a whip-like tail. The general color of the body was black with 1 foot wide brownish rings every 5 feet, the first starting just behind the head. The skin was smooth but dull. Aside from this detailed description, Lesalic captured a few photos of the beast, although there has been some argument and debate as to the validity of the photos. But, Photoshop didn't exist in the 1960s, so there's no way that these could be photoshopped. Duh. Number 1. Organism 46B. Our number 1 creature is something called Organism 46B. Maybe it's an SCP that hasn't been classified yet. Organism 46 was discovered in Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake located under 2 miles of ice beneath the Vostok Station and the Antarctic, a Soviet research station established sometime in 1957. Organism 46B in question was an absolutely massive 33-foot long, 14-tentacled creature that displayed unimaginable abilities, some bordering on not being of this world. In studies, it was shown to have limbs that were capable of retaining autonomy, aggression, and even animation after being separated. It's been purported to have a toxin inside its body that is capable of releasing to immobilize prey from far away, and all studies of it show that it is incredibly hostile. Makes sense. The legend of Organism 46B stems from an unknown date between February 2012 and November 2016. Pinpointing the location of that first true sighting has proved to be difficult. After 30 years of ice core drilling, miners at Vostok Station breached through to the lake in 2012, which is where the story comes from. The doctor who claims to have first discovered the creature is one Anton Padalka, although tracking him down has also been difficult. Entirely possible he's gone into hiding. He writes, "We encountered this organism, which we named 46B on our first day. It disabled our radio, which we later learned was intentional. It's also able to paralyze prey from a distance of 150 feet away by releasing venom into the water. Tragically, my colleague and my lifelong friend lost his life this way. He tread water wearing a blissful smile as the organism approached him. We watched helplessly as it used its arms to tear off his head and then popped the remains in his mouth. It was as if he'd been hypnotized telepathically. Eventually, the crew was able to trap the creature in a tank, and the surviving team gave the organism off to the Russian government, where presumably it was studied. But you want this Crypt Keeper's opinion? Almost certainly a beast like this was taken to the SCP Foundation, where it could be properly secured, contained, and protected. I'd urge you to click through on the channel and hear some of our reports on the SCP Foundation if you're not familiar with the organization already. It's illuminating stuff.
Number 5. Scarborough Beach. Apparently this thing was caught like last month, so it really does exist. Alright, that's it. I guess we can go home. Call it a day. No, seriously, it really does exist. When we think of the Kraken, I always picture like this 40-foot Lovecraftian monster climbing up pirate ships, cracking it in half in the 1940s. Well, they actually look more like this. Yeah. The Octopuses ducks, or the giant squid. Scarborough Beach in South Africa just swashbuckled this thing long enough to get a picture. Have you ever seen a picture of a kraken? Because I haven't either. Because these things are apparently so rare to see. This thing fights sperm whales. Yeah, out of the water they just look like a bunch of pool noodles and wet crinoline. But under the water, these things grow up to like 100 feet. It's like a 10-story building. Like, of tentacles. The giant squid is the longest cephalopod out there. That's the class of mollusks that includes squid, cuttlefish, and octopus. While there have been many claims of these ocean giants achieving lengths of 100 feet, the suckers on the giant squid's tentacles and arms measure to about your hand in diameter. Yeah, these suckers are lined with sharp, serrated ring teeth too. All that, plus suction, just holding on to you. No wonder they kill sperm whales, scar them up all Joker style, just rear naked choking them down into the twilight zone. Cap out. Cap out! Number 4, origins. We're going back to the origins story, the prequel if you may. So who really was the first person unfortunately lucky enough to see this thing crawl up their ship and start swallowing people? The Kraken has been around for a while, right? Aristotle talked about large squids in Historia Animalium, while Pliny the Elder also described a huge squid with arms measuring more than 9 meters in length. Tales of gargantuan sea monsters have been common for centuries across Europe as well. And then of course, they're there for the Norse legends of the ferocious Kraken. The king of Norway, Sverre Sigurdsson, was the king from 1184-1202 of Norway. Sigurdsson believed a monster in the shape of a giant squid stalked the water around Norway, Iceland, and Greenland, just terrorizing sailors, dragging them down. Mentions of the Kraken can also be found once again in 1250 in a Norwegian text known as the King's Mirror. Here, the narrator discusses all sorts of creatures found, including mermaids and mermen, and of course, the Kraken. Back then it was called Hafgufa. I tried. A monster so big that it could swallow up an entire ship. The Hafguva. The term Kraken was actually first used by Danish author Erik Pontoppidan in his works The Natural History of Norway, 1755. Quote, a great tentacled monster that would surface and attack ships at sea and then subsequently cause whirlpools and disappear. Then in 1857, Danish zoologist Japtus Steenstrup compiled stories of washed up animals and one particularly large squid that lurked amongst the ocean. He named it the Octopuses ducks, or the giant squid. Number 3, Medusa. In 2004, the first giant squid was photographed while still alive. Zoologist Dr. Tsunemi Kobadera and whale watcher Kiyoshi Mori went looking for sperm whales off of Ogasawara Island south of Japan. They dropped a baited line and a camera to about 900 meters and snapped a selfie. A few years later, in 2012, scientists hit the jackpot. Kobadera once again traveled back to Japan now with deep sea explorer Edith Witter and Dr. Steve O'Shea armed with their secret weapon, Medusa. A special camera rig with a very clever name. Medusa uses a low-light strobe system to avoid scaring the squid away. No boats, no motors, no loud noises, no submarines. Nice and quiet. They dropped Medusa to about 700 meters and captured a massive giant squid for the very first time in history. Basically, a camera with a float with like 200 feet of line carried through the current. Then they went down. They went down in the Triton, a 2-person submarine, and baited this thing out of the deep darkness with a bat squid and a strobe light. This thing was more than 2 stories big. Quote from Edith, we've only explored about 5% of the ocean. There are great discoveries yet to be made down there. Fantastic creatures representing millions of years of evolution and bioactive compounds that could benefit us in ways we haven't even imagined yet. We need a NASA-like organization for ocean exploration. Mind blown. 100%. Look, I'm the alien guy, Edith, and I couldn't agree with you more. Let's get some money going and get down there. Start snapping some pictures, see what's lurking. Number 2, octopuses. And now we head on up to Canada, of course, to the west. The best place for UFOs, Bigfoots, and now apparently Krakens. A British Columbia photographer was apparently walking a Vancouver Island beach with her dog when she discovered a large, quote, orange blob. Just a couple of months ago, quote, the little suction cups were even bigger than a toonie. Not quite the size of my palm, but they were big. She said the head was 2 feet alone. The creature is the Anoroctopus duflani, aka the giant Pacific octopus, the largest octopus species on Earth. Okay, squids, octopuses, they're both cephalopods. Could the infamous beast just be one of those? Last month, another huge guy was found in Newport, Oregon. That sounds like the start of a joke, doesn't it? An octopus washes up in Newport, Oregon. I don't know. Just the words there. 3 fishermen found this giant clinging to their crab fishing basket. Yeah, imagine that, just like holding on. Talking like 600 pounds here, people. 30, 40 feet. That thing could climb aboard and snap a little dinghy, no problem. Okay, maybe this thing really was out there snapping boats in half. Like they can both unscrew lids and escape bottles. They have brains and nervous systems. Dude, I'm only doing land from now on. I can't go in space, I can't go swimming. Like what's happening here? And number 1, Smithsonian. The number 1 spot, of course, the Smithsonian. Okay, so you can actually go and actually see this actual legendary Leviathan. Well, apparently at any of those places I just mentioned, but at least at the leisure of your own time and safety, here. Nowhere near water or the Twilight Zone. For just a couple of bucks, you can see the Kraken at a couple of places now. The big rare ones are all at the Smithsonian Natural Museum of Natural History, and there's only 2. A zoologist named Dr. Clyde Roper has spent his life learning about the Kraken. He's discovered new cephalopod species, published more than 150 scientific papers, and now helps underwater himself, swimming around in a submarine looking for more. There are about a dozen giant squids on display in museums around the world. But at the Smithsonian, this female and male, the female obviously being bigger in its case, was caught by 2 fishermen's nets off the coast of Spain in 2005. 40 feet in length, 20 feet tentacles. The oldest one to date is about 300 million years old at the Royal Ontario Museum, of course. Suction cups still on this rock and all. I guess for now all we can do to help out is recycle, keep that shit out of the oceans, you know? Sit on Google Earth all day, refresh, scan the 7 seas. I guess that's about it.